Hey everybody, Scott Stevens here with a look at weather on this Monday after, as I posted on Facebook, why does all the fun weather happen on the weekend? It doesn't always, but if you're one of those storm chaser guys or we've got a hurricane coming and they happen to make landfall on the weekend, then that kind of counts as the climax for that particular event that you've been anticipating for days, maybe even a week or two in the course of, if you're talking about one of those tropical storms that kind of form way out in the Atlantic and then just take their merry time coming on ashore. So, yeah, the fun weather does happen as we move towards the weekend, it always seems. All right, let's come on out here and kind of get this puppy going. It's hot. There's a few places where we've got some heat going on in Europe, and of course, we're going to show you the headline and then what else is happening just around the corner. Because hot, locally, very hot weather through at least the last days of July, and that kind of makes sense if you've got one warm day this time of year and the kind of the slow movings of the jet stream and the pattern set up. You're going to have 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbles this time of year. First cold, then summer weather hits the UK for this week, and then as we get into the northern parts, just off Norway, the Arctic Norway, reaching almost 22 Celsius, which is 72 Fahrenheit. That's 78 degrees latitude north. And if you've watched for any period of time, we've talked about the Arctic Oscillation. And when you park a high pressure sitting up there, then that kind of displaces the cool weather farther south. So even if we have heat sitting that far north, the amount of blue or the abnormally cool weather surrounding it will far exceed in square miles or square kilometers surface area than that particular hotspot. So kind of fascinating how that works. The watchers Hurricane Hanna made landfall, and there are all these headlines about Douglas, and that turned out not to be the biggest news. Was Douglas? In fact, we're back into the regular northeasterly trade winds across the entirety of the Hawaiian Island chain, as the exposed eye of Douglas has now had the convection stripped away, and that baby is kind of like pulling away from the thunderstorms. But it just kind of grazed the Big Island on Saturday, and then Saturday night, Sunday, it cruised just offshore. Yes, there were winds. Yes, there were orographic showers and an occasional thunder shower, but by and large, it was just a stock up for the event kind of week ahead of this arrival, because it could have been a whole lot worse. It could have just run right up the chain had it been about 100 miles or less towards the south and west. So we're kind of grateful in that regard. All right, Mike Seidel, excuse me, down on the Texas Gulf Coast, watching that storm surge come inland, and then if you don't pick it up, you're going to have to pick it up later. Excuse me. And so the floodwaters kind of came in. In fact, it really isn't floodwaters, because this is just plain beach erosion. And you can see the big dunes there, certainly large enough, and you have to cut out a part of it so that the human foot traffic can then get onto the beach. But certainly dealing with some of that. And now as Hanna has moved deeper inland in that incredible terrain at Nuevo Leon in northeastern Mexico, dealing with that 1, 2, 3, 4 inches worth of rainfall, and that kind of terrain just really allowing for quite a lot of rainfall cascading off those rocky hills. All right, hey Vicky, Robin, Donald, it's chilly outside here in the sun-graded Crisco Mountains of Colorado. Indeed it is. What am I looking at? About 69, 70 degrees right now, so much cooler than usual. And we'll get to the why here in just a moment. And Tracy, you've got some chilly weather coming down for Australia. Going to be a few days, but there's at least 2 blasts of it, just kind of reminding Aussies that it's still winter, and that hasn't quite let go yet. First of all, though, we've got the investigative area or area of interest. 92L has a robust spin to it, but it's lacking any convection. If this system starts to fire up, it'll quickly be named as the 9th tropical storm of the 2020 Atlantic season. It is way out there. It is a good ways away. And then this is a composite of the animation of Hurricane Hanna. And remember, it wasn't supposed to be a hurricane at landfall, maybe 60 miles an hour, but it just blew up completely unexpected. The path was on, and they got the path just right, but the intensity forecast was in one word, it was a bust. That was completely missed. All right, so here we go with Ryan Mao, a strong tropical wave that was expected to develop into a powerful hurricane has nearly disappeared in the recent models. It had been anticipated to kind of roll on through here, but it just isn't holding together. So we're going to watch that rather closely. All right, now we're talking down to Australia, kind of a little bit warm. So what we're looking at in this map, the red areas, the orange areas, the yellow areas are temperatures just slightly above normal. 2 Celsius, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees. And then a little bit below normal, what do we get to minus 2, 4, 5, 6, and minus 8 or 8 degrees below typical normals where we find the greens. So we had that record heat mentioned up in this direction, and that's in place. But surrounding, and in fact, if we want to rewind about 2 weeks, it was northern Siberia that was recording 100 Fahrenheit or like 37 Celsius, 37 or 38 Celsius for the first time ever above the Arctic Circle. And now they're running 7, 8, 9 degrees Celsius below normal. So that cold is in place. So these highs are highly variable. They wander around the northern pole. And just before the weekend, we showed you what it looked like from the polar view. We might do that again this time. But the reason I'm here is down here in Australia. And we'll run this so we get out 24 hours. It's still warm in Southwest Australia, but cool in the north and northeast. And then we've got a cold front that comes on through about a week's time. It truly is about a week, so we get a nice pouring of chilly air all the way through and into the outback, whereas the eastern U.S. cools down where they're in near record heat. And then, of course, Finland and those places which are at record heat, which is completely unsustainable, will return to more normal conditions. And then Australia, as we move out to about 7, 8, 9, 10 August, get one, if not two, reinforcing surges of cooler air. Those on the Gold Coast likely not to get quite as much of that as those farther to the west. All right, rainfall in China. And the floods are still ongoing. It's still raining. And we are in that wet time of year. The issue is that with rivers already at or above flood stage, the soil saturated, it doesn't matter how much rain you get or don't get, it's going to be a while before they come below flood level. And as we look out into here, I'm going to show you, this is in millimeters because it's over a location or region that uses the metric system. That's just the way it is. But up to 500 is a half a foot, a half a meter of rainfall. So that is 20 some odd inches. So we get down here to 250, right in here to the white zone. That is half of that, or about 10 inches worth of rainfall. So as we scroll this through, what we're looking at is China right in through here. We've got Japan here, Korea here, and there's still heavy, heavy rainfalls. The flooding has been in place for 2 weeks now as we get to off the Tibetan Plateau and then draining down towards the Bay of Bengal. And that looks like it continues in a way as it should. It is the season, but I'm going to run this all the way to the end so we can kind of get our jollies out of it. But in parts of the Yangtze River Basin, it does begin to dry out. That process appears to have already begun. And we're pushing this model all the way into the middle of August. But there's still a couple of tropical disturbances that want to appear in the models, and those and where they eventually go is certainly far from uncertain. But we're still looking at some of the upper watersheds of the Yangtze, not in the middle part, but upper. It still is copious amounts of rainfall. So anticipate that flooding and then those impacts are going to go on for a little bit while longer. All right, the western U.S., this is the water vapor imagery. The red and yellows are the dry air. The jet stream is kind of undulating up in here. And I'm showing you this because what shows up in these altitudes are contrails. And it was a little better this morning because you could see the stripes crossing the dry barriers, and you can see these trails literally kind of breaking in two and separating and being really, really good guides for those remote sensing systems that kind of look up in space, measure the clouds, and then use all of that data to feed into computer models so we can get an idea of what the jet stream is doing so we can forecast what it is going to do. And if you have all of these traces, all of these markers up there, it gives you incredibly detailed and valuable data for what the jet stream is doing. All right, closer to home, we've got the Southwestern Monsoon in place with some big thunderstorms erupting in portions of Arizona, New Mexico, portions of Colorado, and that is what is keeping parts of the Southwest and the desert Southwest kind of on the cool side today. Where are we here? 69 and sprinkles outside. That's just normal's middle 80s, so we're good 15 degrees cooler than normal. But as far as other severe weather, it's kind of traipsed out onto the east, and then another surge of cool weather working its way south along the southern Great Lakes states and then into Missouri. And for who is Karen? Karen is in Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania. So they're hot. They will get some relief, though. That is not that far away, as they've got middle 90s out in that direction. And that, to me, is without air conditioning is just ugly. Where we are is closer here to the 60s in the southern portions of Colorado, whereas eastern Idaho at 95, 101 at the Dalles in Oregon, 112 as you move down to Havasu, Lake Havasu, Arizona on the lower Colorado River Valley. So we've got hot spots. They're just punctuated by sweet relief of thunderstorms, and even a few areas of flood warning showing up in Colorado, which is, well, that hasn't happened too often this summer. And then the monsoon, if we can keep this going a month, a month and a half, because the American Southwest really relies on these summer rains in the middle of the heat, in the middle of the driest atmosphere, typically, to get this kind of rainfall, which really aids the watersheds and the plants and so forth. So as we move out the next little while, for storm chasers, the hashed red areas are where the heavy rain flash flooding is possible, along with this risk of the potentially severe weather. And there's always going to be little zones as we move through the summer. The Southwest tries to dry out. It looks like the monsoon gets shut down a little bit, but there's still risks of rain nearly from coast to coast. And record temperatures today, yep, southeast, the tri-state area, even down into portions of far eastern Kentucky, out to Wilmington, North Carolina. It looks like that would be, yeah, about Wilmington or Hatteras, probably Hatteras at 90 degrees. So very warm in that area. But otherwise, as we move out through the week, the risk of, strong record-breaking temperatures just is not all that great. As far as precip, wettest locations going to be where we're seeing those storms. Mexico, just rain. I'd love to go down there and see these mountains of western Mexico after a summer of just copious amounts of rainfall like they've had this year. That to me would, with that jagged, intense terrain and then just lush and green and blooming, I'd really enjoy seeing that. But elsewhere, that's kind of tame, certainly within normal bounds across the states. And then as we look at the 6 to 10 day outlook, cool. No, right there, cool. Through, yeah, the mid Mississippi Valley and the central Great Plains. So that is pleasant. And then the west, just opposite that. Again, if you've got a cool spot, there's got to be a hot one very nearby. All right, Tracy, looks like we are going to get some lovely weather. Just keep the rain away for the next couple of weeks. Camping is no fun in the rain. There's some truth in that. There's definitely some truth in that. Yeah, the implications of that photo are crazy, says Robin, and I'm trying to remember which one we were pointing at. Wendy's there, around 92, so says Karen, and South Central Pennsylvania. Good news, none of that nonstop high heat humidity this year. Yeah, that just kind of makes summer not just as fun as it could be, especially if you don't have the relief of being able to pop inside and have air conditioning. And once again, Karen's like beautiful, scary, huge cumulonimbus clouds last night, named compliments of Google. And then underneath them, if you've got the turbulence, mamatus is the term for that. And that's the turbulence in the wake of the storm. In fact, I've seen beautiful thunderstorms come along. The mamatus, this is a time lapse, mind you. The thunderstorm is here, and then just a field of mamatus, almost like you've got a snowplow coming through and just tears the storm apart, and then you're left with some gorgeous mamatus, but then no rain, and that's the downside to it. Yeah, Donnie, thanks for that. The Scott Stevens page weather is always a great place to watch. And we're trying to build out our personal pages, not our profiles. So if you want to go and like that, that does us all a solid. That actually got that out. All right, coming up in about 15 or 45 minutes, we're going to look at the fourth turning. Have you heard of the fourth turning? Economic times, cycles, political cycles, art and culture, a bit of revolution thrown in there because, as with everything, there's a process of building, sustaining, and destroying. And the fourth cycle highlights the latter part of that, and then the challenges that societies and the systems that are in place at that particular time face as they endure or give way to the destruction and revolution that always accompanies the end of a cycle. All right, thanks for stopping in, guys. I'm going to come back full screen so you can get a look at this mug, and then I'll see you in about 45 minutes, and we'll have a walk down that road. And at the same time, we're going to go buy a little silver. Have you seen what silver's done today? 25 bucks an ounce. 25 bucks. Amazing. All right, guys, and Bitcoin too. Holy cow. Go check that baby out. All right, see you in about 45 minutes. Hey, keep looking up.